Good evening and welcome to the franchise. I don't know what happened there. That intro has gone horrendously wrong. Hello, my name's Freddie and welcome to the Franchise Tag podcast. I am your usual host for the Tuesday show. Welcome back, Adam. Sky is meant to be here, but he has been very poorly. But he's done a no-show on us, Adam. He's hung out to dry, some may say.
We believe in it. I mean, you know what Sky's like. He's probably been on the drink again, so that's probably what the issue is, isn't it?
Not that any of his work colleagues watch this, but he definitely hasn't been on the drink again. Is that what we're going to do? Because he didn't turn up, we're going to get him sacked, yeah?
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, it's retribution. I mean, you don't turn up, you lose your job. I don't understand what the problem is.
Or Eric Ten Hag him.
Why? Well, why not? I mean, that's not going to confuse any of our American listeners, but I mean, yes, we will Eric Ten Hag him.
Well, do you want to play the role of Bruno Fernandes, the guy who says
I'd rather not, if you don't mind. It's not my idea of fun.
Well, we'll get the Monday night show kicked off. It's going to be the same format as usual. Sky may make a guest appearance if he wakes up from his flu like coma that he is in, bless him. So we wish him all the best, and thank you guys for still watching us and sharing our content. We are very excited for Germany that is coming up this weekend in Munich, so I will be there for that, which will be a lot of fun. So make sure you catch all our content that we do while we're over there. Lots of action. We'll start obviously with the Thursday night action, which was the New York Jets beating the Houston Texans 21-13, obviously a while ago now, but then we go on to the Sunday fixtures where we had the Atlanta Falcons beating the Dallas Cowboys 27-21. The Ravens absolutely battering the Denver Broncos 41-10. Onto the Buffalo Bills, who beat the Dolphins in a divisional contest 30-27. He says that, but he just decided to log off that page. Yes, it was 30-27. But we shall start off with our premium game this evening, and that is the Las Vegas Raiders losing to the Cincinnati Bengals 41-24. Raiders now at 2-7, Bengals at 4-5. I mean, this was obviously has had lots of repercussions afterwards, Adam, with the offensive coordinator being fired, whose name's escaping me. Joe Getsy, is that the right name?
Luke
Getsy. That's the one. He's now been removed from his position as offensive coordinator for the Las Vegas Raiders. What do you make of this game? I mean, I think it was the Joe Burrow show, quite aptly.
Yeah, it did feel a little bit like that, didn't it? Where obviously the Bengals were without T. Higgins. They were without Jermaine Burton. Zach Moss wasn't there as well. So they had quite a few guys out on that offense. And was it 41? Yeah, 41-24. So they managed to put up a lot of points. I think it's when we spoke about this game on the betting show, we were very much like, this is going to be about whether or not Burrow and Chase can basically get the job done. And I must admit, I was surprised that they managed to win by as many as what they did, because I was a little bit concerned about them, whether they were going to be able to cover the spread, which they did quite easily. But it was to me, it feels like it is very much about Burrow and Chase and whether that combination can basically get it going. And the Raiders just, I don't know, it's all kind of falling apart again, isn't it?
Yeah, and to stick on the Bengals for the minute, I mean, Burrow 27-39 in the day, 251 yards, 5 touchdowns in that pick. Like, this throwing offense has never been the question for the Bengals, has it? Like, this is no surprise. Like, it's and that's, sorry, I've just been like thrown off because it's just gone battery low right in my ears on my headphones. For a minute, I was like, no, not the computer, but it's okay. The computer is fine. So yeah, the offense throwing wise hasn't been the question. It's been the running game and their defense, which has been the problem. And it sort of feels like when that's going wrong for them, they're going to concede points. So it's just like, we'll just throw at you all day long and just score more points. Like that's what our game plan is now. Is just, we're not strong enough there. We're not strong enough in our run game. Though they put up 130 rushing yards on the day, which is pretty good for this Bengals team. Like, they don't do anything that well other than, like you said, the Joe Burrow show to Jamar Chase in a way. And the interception really on Burrow's scorecard there, it weren't really his fault. Really, it was the wide receiver was horrendous at blocking the corner, and the corner went and jumped in on that shallow throw on the line on the sideline there. That was meant to be sort of a screen pass, wasn't it? In a way.
Yeah. It like you say, it does feel very much like that is what it is. It is Burrow and Chase. And in fairness, Chase Brown is kind of shown himself up as sort of like the main guy when it comes to the rushing attack now. But the one
Zach
thing
Moss is out as well, isn't he? He's injured.
Yeah, Zach Moss being out. So, but I do feel like even before this week that Chase Brown was starting to sort of take over that job a little bit. But as we've said a few times now this season, the biggest problem that they have is that they haven't replaced Joe Mixon. That's the real issue, and that was something that I don't think a lot of people really considered as a massive problem for them going into this season, because Mixon obviously has been very good like throughout his whole career, but I think they just didn't consider the fact that the amount of opportunities that he took when they were like within 5 yards and just sort of like got it in the end zone.
To be fair though, Zach Moss wasn't bad at the Colts, was he? Like he sort of like
he wasn't.
He caught fire with Taylor being out, performed really well, and almost got himself like it became like teams will see him as a running back one now, and scoop him up, and he sort of got the opportunity, and then it's sort of shown. But maybe Colts O-line is pretty all right. Like, maybe not this year, but it's
no, not this year. But it's one of them things where I think you do have to maybe question the O-line play a little bit with the Bengals. They haven't been quite as good, and maybe that's part of the reason they're just not making the running lanes that they were before and have done in the last couple of years. But I think what the biggest issue the Bengals are showing, and to be brutally honest, if you're giving up 24 points against the Raiders at the moment, that Raiders offense is struggling a lot. I think it shows that basically the Bengals are having to score a lot of points in order to win a game. And, like I say, if you're giving 24 up to the Raiders, they gave, when you actually come up against a good team, like when they came up against the Ravens, and they're giving up like 41 points, it's so difficult to win them games. And actually what you're starting to see here is a little bit of the criticism that Justin Herbert always used to have with the Chargers, where it's like, because the Chargers defense was so poor all the time, he had to score loads of points in order to just win a game. I think this is what you're seeing with Joe Burrow, and this is why the 4-5 record is what it is.
Yeah. And on the flip side with the Raiders, like they held their own the first half. Like they kept going with them. They were keeping up with them. And like what I don't get about them is the quarterback. There's an issue at quarterback. Aiden O'Connell's not the guy. Gardner Minshew's not the guy. They brought in Desmond Ridder as well. Like
I'll give you a clue. He's not the guy.
Well, no, he's not the guy either. No, not at all. But the problem is with that offense is, well, when a quarterback's not the guy, you need to then rely on your run game to sort of give you some margin of hope, I suppose. And they're the 31st worst rushing team in the league. They've got 692 yards on the season so far. Like they have nothing to lean on offensively. Like actually, when you look at their box score and their stats on the season, but on both sides of the ball, weirdly, these teams are like nearly the same. Like they're in the same bracket for the whole thing. Like on both sides of the ball, it's just the Bengals have a quarterback. Really, that's really what it's all about, isn't it? The Bengals has the quarterback and they don't. And didn't Nate Hobbs go out in injury as well? Their defense isn't great. Max Crosby's just incredible and made some incredible plays in this game as well. But when you lose Nate Hobbs, who to a lot of people is quite an underrated corner around the league, he's not too bad. Like, but they've not got loads on that. So like they're just this team is just in real disarray. They've got nothing great they can lean on outside of Max Crosby being able to rush the passer. That's about all they do well. I mean, Christian Wilkins, obviously, he's injured, right? Yeah, that's not what about. So, I mean, it's just all about getting the quarterback right, isn't it? As opposed to this Raiders team at some point. And that'll be probably in April next year.
Yeah. I mean, that is what it is when it comes to the Raiders. It is about getting the quarterback and just generally getting the offense right. I've been saying now for the last couple of weeks, I think that this defense has still got some juice in it. Like, it's still capable of doing things. And I think largely all the time you've got Max Crosby there, you're going to have a chance to be able to do something defensively. It's a bit weird saying that. They've given up 41 points, so it's a bit of an odd one to come out and say that. But I still believe that, like you say, they kept them in it. They weren't far off. I mean, at half time it was 17-10, so they're not exactly like they've completely fallen apart in all sides of the ball. But yeah, I think that the massive issue that they've got is that the offense just isn't doing anything. Gardner Minshew, clearly Antonio Pierce doesn't fancy him. He's brought in Aidan O'Connell to replace him. He's then got injured, had to play Minshew again. They've now had Desmond Ridder, brought him in this game in order to replace him. Clearly doesn't want Minshew as his quarterback. And I believe has come out and said that, because they're on their bye week now, has come out and said that they haven't got a starter at the moment and he's not going to make a decision until next week. So it does very much feel like that position at the moment is very much in flux. No one really knows who they're going to go with. As you say, the run game has been very poor. I think Mattison is an okay running back, but I feel like he's probably a number 2 that you want rather than the number 1. And Zamir White has just done nothing all season, despite the fact that we all thought that he was going to be the guy. So that just hasn't happened. And I think that they've got a great tight end in Brock Bowers. I think Jacoby Myers is a good sort of like wide receiver 2 to have. I think he's ideal, but they desperately need to go out and get themselves some offensive help in the off season for next year.
But they had that. They had that in Devontae Adams, didn't they?
I think that the problem with Devontae Adams is that obviously the reason he came over is he wanted to play with Derek Carr. So if you trade away Derek Carr, you're going to get a pretty stroppy Devontae Adams. And I know he was there, but was he really, kind of thing? Is he just going through the motions and basically getting paid? So I think they need to do that. And it's not even so much that they need to do it in the draft. They will be able, they've got a lot of money. They're a really funny team. They're not far away. They're really not. And they kind of, the way they're setting up, especially with Bowers now, it feels like they want to play like the Chiefs. That's how it really feels like they want to play. And I think they have the potential in a couple of years to have sorted themselves out, but they need to have, to me, it feels like they need a head coach and they need to stick with him. And it's just a matter of whether Antonio Pierce is the guy you want to stick with or not.
Certainly very interesting. It's very interesting with Antonio Pierce as well, because I just don't really know. I sort of want to really support him, but it ain't a great look. You get rid of OC, you go, we don't really know starting a quarterback. It's a little bit like the whole Anthony Richardson the other week with I was just tired. Pick your moments, look around and look at the experienced head coaches. They're not saying that sort of thing, so it'll be interesting to see how they move forward with this, certainly. Moving on to some of the other score lines from the weekend. We had the Carolina Panthers narrowly beating the New Orleans Saints 23-22 in that last-ditch effort by the Saints to try and get back in it, which was a pretty wild game in the end. The LA Chargers beat the Cleveland Browns 27-10. The Commanders commanding a victory of 27-22 against their NFC East rivals, the New York Giants. The Patriots, so close, so close to beating the Titans, but the Titans getting their second win of the season, 20-17. We will move on to our next game of the evening, which for some reason, it's not having Sky here, everything just starts to not working. People don't know what, my headphones just gave out. You don't know which game you're at. It's such a muddle when you're not here, Sky. Let's go to the Jacksonville Jaguars game, though, against the Eagles, Philadelphia Eagles, with the Eagles winning 28-23. I think we are going to have two very different spins on this game, and it's going to be quite interesting to hear your thoughts to begin with, because mine are inflammatory.
Excellent. I think that I find so. Oh, I can't believe you're giving me this game. Right.
Let's maybe start with that move by Saquon Barkley.
I was going to say
that's going to be Odell Beckham-esque.
Yeah.
In the corner against Dallas, sort of history-making moment. Like that was so cool, like such a moment, like so fun. I mean, AJ Brown's reaction to it was just hilarious. He was just laughing his head off, couldn't believe what he'd done, and like it just shows what talent this dude is, man.
No, he's great, and all Giants fans are really happy about it. No, he's great, and I think you've got. I know that he's someone that a lot of people are talking about as Offensive Player of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
I think the sort of numbers that he's putting up are arguably someone that you should do. Unfortunately, you've got Derrick Henry at the moment, and so I think that pretty much is going to be very difficult. If both of them stay fit and they carry on doing what they're doing, then it's going to be tough to get past Derrick Henry, I think, for that. But Barkley's been great, and really, I think that with the Eagles, the reason that it worked so well for the first 37 minutes, something like that, is because the ball is consistently going through Barkley. And I think as soon as you start deviating from that, that's when it suddenly gets difficult. And that's probably quite difficult, I would have thought, for many Eagles fans to hear, because they've got so many big names on that offense, but it does really feel like when you move away from Barkley, it does sort of become a problem.
It's a Barkley centric offense now, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's I've got this offense now revolves around. If you want to go the distance, if you want to be a serious NFC Championship contender, it needs to go through Barkley. It needs to roll around. And we joke, we laugh at the start there about Barkley's. Devontae Smith had two incredible moments as well in this game, but like. I mean, 27 carries, 159 yards, a touchdown, and then 40 yards in the pass and a touchdown as well for Henry. I mean, he is just. It has to go through him, doesn't it? It has to go through him. I'm going to be, really inflammatory. I'm going to really upset some people.
Go on, go for it. You know you want to.
This win is not as incredible at face value as it's a highlight reel win. This is a highlight reel win. This is so. I feel like the NFL world has woken up this morning talking about Devontae Smith's catch and Saquon Barkley's amazing hurdle, but you don't look at the facts of box score of this. You scored 447 total yards compared to 215. You had 210 passing yards to 155 passing yards against Jags. 237 rushing yards to 60 rushing yards. You had two interceptions. You got two interceptions from Jags. You sacked the quarterback 3 times. You had 52% third down efficiency. You had the ball for 17 minutes longer, and you only beat them by 5. Like, I'm sorry, this might be hard for you to say. This is not a good look, this win, I don't think. Yeah, it's a whole highlight reel package. It is an incredible package of Barkley and Smith, and there were some great moments in that game. But coming up against this Jags team who are 2-7, who have been terrible on defense, have not been good on a predictable offense. Their offense runs through Evan Engram and Brian Thomas. You mark them guys out the game. Okay, is it Braxton Strange, their other tight end? He's had a few decent moments within this season, but like, if you want to be taken seriously, you need to shut this team down. And with them scored, with that box score, with them stats, and you've only scored 28 points, like, That's not a great look. I don't think that's a great look. Yes, there was some highlight moments, of course. Like, no one ever doubted how good AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, Saquon Barkley are. There is no doubt about that at all. But to beat them by 5 with that stat line, like, am I just being harsh? I do feel like when I was doing this, I felt like I was picking this apart a little bit and not being as complimentary to the Eagles as I should be, because for me, I just looked at the face value going, like, you have the Jags at home and you beat them by 5 points. Like, that's not looking good to me.
I think on paper they should be winning this by a considerable margin, and so the 5-point victory is a bit like what happened kind of thing. But if you kind of look at how the game sort of panned out, they were 22 points ahead. The Jags hadn't scored anything as you were sort of like halfway through the third quarter. And I do think that when you've got through that much of the game and you're in that sort of position, I do wonder if there is a tendency to sort of put your foot off the pedal a little bit and not be so much. Because I felt very much that everything was going through Barkley, and then all of a sudden it wasn't. And just for a short period of time, it wasn't. And then all of a sudden, because it suddenly went, oh, it's 22-16 at the end of the third, in the fourth quarter, that we then went back through Barkley again. And to me, it felt a little bit like that.
But
I think
if it weren't for a bum throw at the end by Lawrence, and more,
yeah, there was that. I do feel like there was. I know that Eagles fans do like to talk about non-calls and calls quite a lot. But I felt like there was a fumble by Barkley where he had been touched and he was down by contact, and they didn't give it, and they gave it as a. And I think when you start getting that happening as well, it kind of, it's almost like a bit more incentive to the Jags when, you know, they probably didn't really deserve it. So I think there are a few things here that have kind of made it a bit closer than what it actually was. And you're right, when it comes to it, right at the very end, you know, Lawrence, I thought it was a pretty poor decision from play calling, probably more than Lawrence sort of thing. I don't know who thought of it, who decided that was the way forward on first, and I think they were first and goal or something like that. They weren't far away, and they decided to throw it in the corner. And it just kind of felt like you didn't need to do that. You could have sort of like gone for sort of some different things. You had plenty of time. You had timeouts as well, so there was no need. But yeah, I think really it's a win, but it's not a great performance. I do feel like their defense has got better and is getting better, the Eagles, as the season's going on, but the offense is patchy at best, and it is sort of like, to me, it feels like it's very, very simple. It really is. If you go through Barkley, you'll probably do well, and if you don't, then you're probably going to struggle if he doesn't get enough of the ball. The problem is, if you're going up against good defenses, I think that's going to be a problem, because I think they're just going to come out and go, okay, well, we're going to stop Barkley then, and just focus on that. And then it's a little bit like, so how do you do anything, especially as it looks like AJ Brown's going to be out again, because he is kind of like, if you can't go through Barkley, he is the difference maker. And if he's going to be injured again, then their offense really does struggle without him and Barkley being stopped. So yeah, it's a difficult one. I don't know. The thing that gets me with the Eagles, or more to the point, the Eagles fans, whenever things go wrong, it's Nick Sirianni's fault, and whenever anything goes right, it's Kellen Moore's fault. So who's making these plays? Because sometimes it's one of them, and the other time it's the other. And it's like, so what's going on? Is it both of them? Is it just not working that well? I don't know. But, yeah.
A word on the Jags, though. I mean, great to keep in the game, I suppose, and took their chances. But like, I mean, the defense, the run defense isn't too bad, but their pass defense is so bad. And like they've drafted corners and brought corners in and safeties in over the years, and it's just never really like panned out. Like CJ Henderson went out and through. They had the Griffin twin who was there for a moment. You know, it's sort of never really recovered from Jalen Ramsey, has it? Really, in a weird way. And
not really. I like Campbell. I think he's all right.
Yeah, I like Tascan. I like Andre Cisco as well, to be fair. And I like, especially after meeting him in the games this year and doing media and seeing him there. But I also think I think his offense has become really predictable now as well. It's like Engram, Thomas a little bit. I know Kirk was in there a little bit as well, but Kirk's obviously injured now. I said Gabe Davis is sometimes a good change of pace. I mean, it's 35 receptions for Thomas on the season, then 27 for Kirk, then 25 for Engram, and I think Gabe has 19. So I know it's you're clutching at straws with that bottom bit there, but it does feel like, and also as well, is this a moment where you think we should stick with Bigsby and move off of ETN?
I think it's really difficult when it comes to that because the Jags are not in a particularly, more often than not, they're not in a very favourable position. They're normally chasing games. Bigsby, I think, is very much the guy who you want when you're in the lead. And when they were playing, who did they play over here? The Patriots, wasn't it?
Yeah.
When they played the Patriots and they were in the lead and it was just like 20 rushing plays, Bigsby every time, then that's great. He works fine. Where he's not, he's more that sort of thumper. He's not so much a explosive type of running back. Yeah, exactly. And so it feels like because of that you would struggle a little bit. But yeah, ETN hasn't been great.
It's a bit like Jalen Warren at Pittsburgh. Like some people are like, Warren's doing so well, he should start over Harris. And you're like, yeah, but Harris does all the really physical work.
And that's why most teams need two. You know, that is the point of it, and that's why most teams need two. And there's very few running backs out there that can do both, and that's or are so good at one that you don't need the other. So it's really difficult. But yeah, the Jags have just, I don't know, they just sort of like they let you down every time, don't they? They really do, and it's just like. You know, I think bringing in players like Gabe Davis, it's one of them things where it's like, well, it didn't I mean, it worked okay at the Bills with Josh Allen. Do we really think it's going to be much better with Trevor Lawrence? I mean, it is a downgrade, isn't it, at quarterback? So it isn't really
a downgrade in terms of they had Calvin Ridley in the building.
Well, yeah, of course, and they had Calvin Ridley as well, and it just kind of. Like you say, it does feel a little bit predictable and a little bit obvious. Brian Thomas, I think, is great, but the problem that Brian Thomas is going to have is he's going to start being known as the number one guy, and he's going to get marked out of games really easily. And when you've got the type of corners that the Eagles have got, it's not going to be difficult for them to really cause him problems. So yeah, it does all go through Evan Engram, and. You know, I mean, his stat line was 5 receptions for 45 yards, which is pretty much what you get with Evan Engram near enough every game that he plays, and that's fine. But it for your tight end, but there's no explosiveness there, and I just feel like the Jags are a team that they've just sort of they missed their chance. They had it a couple of years ago, and they've really missed their chance, and now they've just completely fallen away again, and. I think it's going to be very difficult for them to be able to do anything with Trevor Lawrence on that contract as well.
Certainly one to keep an eye on for April, I suppose. At this point. So the final games to sort of cover before we go into our last game that we're going to review. We had the Arizona Cardinals smashing the Chicago Bears 29-9. I mean, that's the scoreline Eagles you should be looking at, but you should have done really against the Jaguars. Just saying. The Detroit Lions beating Adams Green Bay Packers 24-14 as a game. I've not actually had a little look at it just yet, unfortunately, because it was past my bedtime by that happened. The Rams won in overtime. The LA Rams beating the Seattle Seahawks 26-20 in overtime. And then we'll go on to our last game that we're talking about for this evening, and that is the Indianapolis Colts losing to the Minnesota Vikings 21-13. That was the late game of last night. A very dominating offense again by the Minnesota Vikings, 415 total yards to Indianapolis. Indianapolis is 227. Could I use the same criticism with box scores and close scores and should smash somebody? Is that acceptable?
What, do you think the Vikings should have won by a lot more?
You look at the box score. It looks dominating. It looks dominating. But I have to admit, I don't think it wasn't Darnold's cleanest game by no stretch of the imagination. And I think, it's not his cleanest game, but when you've got Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson, like, it's just no break. They're just so, and obviously Hockenson's back as well. I know that the other tight end got more receptions and more yards than Hockenson on the night, but when they've been so good for all this season so far, and haven't had their full arsenal of offensive weapons at one given point, and now they do. And well, they've lost a tight end to injury today, I think, but they're a good team. They're a good team, and the Colts are a team that don't know what they are, and they're just a bit meh for me. The Colts now, like, I don't know what was your aspect of this game. What was your opinion?
Yeah, it did kind of feel a little bit like if the Colts were going to win, it was because the Vikings were going to throw it away rather than anything else. I think, like you say, the Vikings are a good team. I think defensively, they're very good at stopping the run. Jonathan Taylor had a quiet night. He only had 48 yards. And I think that is probably the reason why they managed by bottling him up. I think that kind of meant that the Colts struggled to really do a great deal of anything on the offense. The Vikings are very good defensively against the run, but you can pass on them. I think it might take a little bit of time with Flacco because obviously this is only his first start, isn't it? I think, or with like as the starter kind of thing. So I think it might take a couple of games for Flacco to get into the rhythm of being that and being the starter. But yeah, it's a tough defense to go up against. Away to the Vikings, great atmosphere for the Vikings there, and I think it was always going to be difficult. And also the Colts defense themselves are not very good on either side of the ball. They do struggle, which is probably why you're seeing so many yards being given up. And the only reason that the scoreline wasn't a lot higher was because of Darnold throwing them 2 interceptions. I mean, one of them was a red zone target, wasn't it? Where he sort of like, tried to score and threw the interception. And so I think because of that, you're dealing with 2 teams that feel like they're going in different directions at the moment. And but yeah, the Vikings pretty much did what they do most weeks now this season. They've been quite the surprise package and have looked very good. And the Colts, as you say, are a bit meh. And I think that, I mean, you can't have 8-8 now, but if ever there was a team that probably would be 8-8, it's this team. So
I think the Vikings, they have been so great in most of their games this season, but the 2 things they need to clean up on is actually turnovers. It's where they need clean up on turnovers on the offensive side of the ball and keep doing what they're doing with turnovers on the defensive side of the ball. Like, they've got 13 turnovers offensively, which is 26th in the league, so incredibly high. And then on the other side of it, they're first in interceptions and 4th in sacks. Joint 4th in sacks. Got 27 sacks and 13 interceptions on the season, of which in this game they had a few of each of them as well. Like, they need to reduce that turnover. Like you said with the interception of Darnold, it weren't his cleanest game by no stretch of imagination. But then when you've got Addison and Jefferson, you do take them risks in a way on occasion because they are both so good and they both made plays in this game that were really fantastic. The Colts team has something. They've got something there. They just need to unlock it, don't they? They just, I know Flacco was never going to unlock it. Like, I wanted Flacco to come in. We've gone on about this a lot of times, but I wanted Flacco to start because I think Richardson needs a little bit more time to learn. And what I'm saying is they've got something with him that they just need to unlock. they've got something with this offense, with Jonathan Taylor, with Pittman, with Dotson. Sorry, not Dotson. That's Jahan Dotson. Who I'm thinking. Downs,
Josh
sorry.
Downs, yeah.
Josh Downs, the wide receiver. They've got something with that. On the defensive side, Moore, the cornerback, Liatu Latu, DeForest Buckner, Grover Stewart, like they've got players here in this team. And they thought it was a quarterback issue. Well, they thought it was a quarterback issue ages ago, and they tried to get all the young guys in. It didn't work. And then they went, well, why don't we just get old guys in rather than young guys? That will work. That didn't work. They then went and found one of the best young prospects out of college, but had very limited game time in college. That's not what. And then they've done it again. We're going, we'll go young. No, we'll go old. We'll go young. No, we'll go old. They just need solidarity there. They just need solidarity there. And they've got a lot going on for this team. And it just, they have 7 penalties, 27% on third down efficiency. They're so, death by 1,000 cuts. They're killing themselves in a way, They're not making it any easier on themselves. And yet, this team, I think, at the bones of this team has really got something. They've got something here.
The only thing I would say about that is we've been saying this every year for quite a few years now. And and that's the problem. But defensively, they've always been very, very strong, but they haven't been strong this year at all. They've really struggled defensively, and it's been a bit of a surprise how poor they have been. I think that everyone at the beginning of the season probably had the Texans for winning the division, but they had a lot of people were talking about the Colts and the Jags being quite close together, and the Colts jumping over the Jags and becoming the sort of like number 2, possibly getting into the playoffs as well, with how strong their defense was supposed to be. And like you say, it just hasn't really worked for them defensively at all. It's been a struggle. And offensively, I know what you're saying. I think that it's a really difficult situation that they've found themselves in here with Anthony Richardson, because it's very much a case of you need to give him game time. Like there's no other outcome where he gets better other than giving him game time. That's as simple as it is. The problem is that if you give him game time, you're going to lose games. So it's like this is where the issue comes in. He didn't, like you say, he's barely played. I mean, he barely played at college. He didn't play much at high school, from what I can gather. I mean, it's amazing that he's managed to get as far as he has, and it just goes to show how amazing his sort of like natural attributes are to get him to this position without really playing a great deal of games. And I think that they're stuck in this position. They have to play him if they've got any chance of getting anywhere. The problem is that they've seen themselves, that they're, before this game they were 4-4. The Texans had lost, didn't they, to the Jets, and they're a little bit like, we've got a chance here, we can do something. He's not going to get you there though. No. And I think Flacco is one of these guys who, if he can get on a run, and like I say, give him a couple of games, I think he'll get better. If he can get on a run and all of a sudden he's playing well again, then he might be able to get you over the hill. But the thing is, where does that actually get you? It probably gets you. It gets you into the playoffs.
Yeah.
So you might get to the playoffs. You're probably going to be a wild card. So if you're going to be a wild card, you're going to be playing what? The Chiefs, the Ravens,
Bills.
One of these, the Steelers, the Bills. This is who you're playing against. Do we think that Flacco gets a win over them? Probably not. And so they're in a really difficult situation where it's like, how do you do anything in order to improve yourself and because the fans want to win now. Everyone wants to win now. All the guys that are playing want to win now, but your quarterback is not capable of winning now. So it's like, how do you develop that? And it's really difficult. They've put themselves in this situation, and I don't really know how they get out of it, other than they're probably going to end up being 8 and 9, and they're going to be stuck in the middle of the draft, and they're not going to be able to bring in great players. It's just a bit of a mess.
It's just click and repeat, isn't it?
every season. So
and they need to. They almost need just a massive shake. They almost need to spring a load of cash and go mental.
Yes.
Or like the Patriots did the other year, where they had like loads of money and they were just like, "We'll take Hunter Henry and Juju and this person." Or you go, right, let's sell off what we've got. Taylor's only going to get older. DeForest Buckner's only going to get older. Like let's sell a few of our assets, total reset, and go again. I don't know.
The problem is that they needed to do that before taking the quarterback. See, that's the problem. This is where it's always the same issue all the time, and it's like you see it in these teams, and it happens all the time. You see them repeating themselves, and it's just like, I mean, don't get me started on the Bears. I mean, it's just mental, and you just sort of think you're just repeating the same cycle over and over again, and it's funny because the Colts have always been a team that we've never said are a bad organization.
No.
But it feels like them not making the right choice, and
but they're not a good organisation.
Well, at the moment they're just mid-table, aren't they? And this is the problem; they're stuck in this sort of like position where you get a few teams always get stuck in the middle, and they just can't sort of get out of it, and they're just I just don't know where they go.
West Ham. Right, let's move to the Monday Night Football preview. And tonight we are having the Kansas City Chiefs visiting the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. A game that I feel like 3 weeks ago, this game would have been hot property. And now it sort of falls a little flat because the Bucs have got so many injuries, lost so many guys. They're on a bit of a dip of form. And it's just like, the Chiefs are just doing what they're doing. But do you think, unbeaten at the minute, could the Buccaneers be the team to halt that?
I think it's going to be very difficult. You're in Kansas, aren't you, as well? So it's going to be tough.
Was it in Kansas? Sorry, I thought it was
in Kansas. You've got no Mike Evans still. You've got no Chris Godwin now. It's going to be tough. I think that Baker will probably relish the challenge. He does seem quite up for it at the moment, and even without his two main wide receivers, he's still being. The team is still competitive. I just don't. Well, it's the same old story, isn't it? You don't back against the Chiefs, so I think that's what it kind of boils down to. And you've got the Buccaneers defense are not fantastic. They're all right, but they're not fantastic.
They're not the one of old. They're not the
they're really not.
They're not. They're I almost feel like there's certain teams that you remember where you go like the reliability. The reliability of that Bucs defense was so like every week you'd be like, well, this Bucs defense is really, really good. And now you flip it, you're like, well, the Chiefs defense, reliable. Like actually, and what the funnest matchup actually, which is a shame because again, 3 weeks ago, this could have been great, is Tampa's passing offense, they're 6th in passing yards and 1st in passing touchdowns, and they're coming up against one of the best teams in the NFL at passing defense and the best rushing defense in the league. Like, if this screams to me like 20, like maybe 24-20, like really close and short.
Yeah. I mean that kind of like that does make sense, and it's like you say, it's kind of almost a shame that they've lost their two main starters. That's where it's almost to a certain degree you feel like you've been robbed from what could have been a really good game here. I still think it'll be close because I just think that the Buccaneers, even with the lack of Evans and Godwin, offensively are still all right. They're not too bad. Cade Otton looks good. Really like McMillan. Think he looks he's been good for them.
Chiefs have only won one game by 10 or more.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect it to be a big. So the spread is -9. I wouldn't be going there at all. I think that the Chiefs. It is kind of it is the Kansas City Patriots, isn't it? This is what they do now, and it is about
January football. That's what they're playing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it is, and it's about winning, but not spectacularly. They're not the whole. sort of like the Detroit Lions version is go and beat up on them and win by as many as you can. It feels like the Chiefs are not interested in that. They don't care as long as they win. That's all they're interested in. And I think they'll get the win in this game. And they're just defensively superior to the Bucks, and offensively, because of the injuries to the Bucks, I think they're probably offensively a bit superior tonight as well. And so I think they'll win, but they won't win by much because they never want to.
Yeah. What's your scoreline prediction?
I think you're probably about right.
I was going to go to like 24-17.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think that's probably not far off. Because I just do not see the Chiefs feeling the need to go out and score 30 plus points. It just feels like they won't do it. So yeah, I mean 24-17, 24-20, that kind of range, I think you're probably about right. And I think it'll be one of them games where at the end of it, anyone who stayed up to watch it will just go, well, yeah, it's the Chiefs. What did we expect? I think that's what it'll be.
4 a.m, and I know the exact same thing I knew at midnight.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Right. Well, if you do stay up for it and it is a barnstormer, good for you. And I hope you enjoy it as well. Thank you, Adam, for joining me, and thank me for hosting this after Sky let us down. If anyone sees him, tell us that, tell him that we're utterly disappointed that he wasn't here, and he will be punished, rightfully so as well. We don't mean that. We mean get well soon.
No, we do mean that. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for watching, and make sure you catch the Tuesday show as well as the college show and the weekend betting show as well coming out this week. As I said earlier, I will be in Munich this week for the tantalizing, high-scoring game that will be the Carolina Panthers against the New York Giants, which should be a lot of fun in the Allianz Arena. So a lot of content coming to you guys this week as well from Germany. Thank you again for watching, and we'll see you all again very soon.